teachings of the way and the way everlasting. I'm so excited to be back with you, and I'm looking forward to starting a new series that I've been working on, and the Father's helping me put together. Um, we're gonna start a new series called "Who is Israel?" and it really bothers me that today we have the Palestinian Gaza conflict, and a lot of believers don't really understand what's going on in Israel, why Israel is doing what they're doing, and who even Israel is in that regard. Um, and I'm just really excited to jump into this series and start to teach some new things that some believers may or may not know. There's lots of ways to approach this, but I feel like in seeking the truth to the question around who is Israel and looking at all the conflict that's in Israel now and in the future that the scripture clearly prophesies about, Psalm 83 and Psalm 84 war, for example. Um, we have to ask a question, who is Israel? But in reflecting on that, the way it's been approached is um, oftentimes, we could draw comparisons to many popular or once popular, I'll say it that way, theories about Israel and its people. It would be easy to simply outline all the various theories that have been taught, like the Black Hebrews, or maybe the descendants of Israel are in Japan, or even the Native American theories, which I love too. Um, but all of these are just that. They are theories. All of them seek to prove or convince of a position on one or the other through historical, archaeological, or even modern day genetics, genealogy, and the genealogy studies. I feel, though, however, none of them break down Yahweh's word and are proven from a position of strength in that regard. If we add this to today's modern view on Israel, the Jews, and mix in things like the Palestine Gaza conflict, it's really no wonder one can get lost in all the rhetoric and dragged into some sort of racist ideology about either Arab or white supremacists the same. So, building upon foundational works already presented in the teachings of the way, the question we have to start with is, who is the God of this world? And how and why has he sought to blind the truth surrounding the people of Israel? Why in America, who once taught Hebrew in all their schools, um, and had a Hebrew culture, why now has a good portion of young adults in America turned against Israel and supporting the Gaza movement? What are they being taught? What are they being shared over social media or other forms of media that has blinded them to the truth of Israel? Why has the enemy gone to such great depths to hide the identity of Judah and the lost 10 tribes of Israel? Why is there so much confusion around this? Are the Black Hebrews correct? Are the other teachings on the flip side, the white supremacists, with all their teachings and the Caucasian theories and all that stuff? Why is there so much darkness? We've gone to great depths to expose the deception the enemy has perpetuated on the world's masses by making his church, through the evolution of Babylonian sun worship, to then Roman Greek and sun worship, to followed by Roman Catholicism, and finally extending that with modern Christianity. We've watched how it's become the world's most popular religion. And it should be no surprise, as scripture is clear in 2 Corinthians 4:4, speaking of the enemy, Satan himself, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them to which do not believe, lest the light of the majestic gospel of Mashiach, Yeshua, the right ruling teachings of the Torah, the written Torah, you know, uh, who is he who is the image of Elohim should shine on them and remove that blindness. So it's our prayer that this teaching would be able to do that for you. And so we begin our study with a simple point. Israel, through the lack of observance and guarding of Elohim's weekly Shabbat, and instead embracing the Babylonian sun worship practices, the holy days and the Sunday worship and all its festivals, it really has caused Israel to become lost and lose their identifying sign of who they were and who they are. So, to begin the study of answering who is Israel, we need to first understand these facts. Nowhere in Scripture are any of the 10-tribe nation of Israel called Jews. That sounds like a controversial statement, but we're going to seek to break down the word Jew and Jews, not just in history, not just in historical context, but from a Scripture standpoint, to understand why we would make that statement. Hebrews and Jews have had a continuous Jewish presence in Israel for over 5,000 years. So it's a really important thing to understand that we're going to show you the scriptures that talk about the beginning origins of Israel and then leading up to today. Falsely, a lot of mainstream Israel history, I find, begins with Israel-Gaza conflict or some kind of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I think that that's very short-sighted in most media today, YouTube and other places like that, that whenever they start to talk about the history of Israel, that they begin with for some reason, the Palestinian conflict. They, in modern times, they begin teaching Israel's history from the British Balfour Agreement in the 1900s, and then quickly move to the White Paper. They completely ignore Babylon and the Syrian conflicts. And then, we'll touch on Zion, which is really important because Zionism, Zion is the age-old name for Jerusalem and the land of Israel, but Zionism is really the national liberation movement of the Jewish people. You really could call it a belief, who sought to restore their freedom and independence in their ancestral homeland. But unfortunately, modern times begin teaching Israel's history from the British Balfour Agreement. So, that's starting in the 1900s. It quickly moved to the White Paper, which followed after that with the League of Nations. And then they referred to the Zionism, the age-old name for Jerusalem and the land of Israel, and that national liberation movement of the Jewish people who sought to restore their freedom and independence in their ancestral homeland. Now, this is the key with the Arabs. This is the part that's not being taught. It doesn't take much research to look and see that both the Jews and the Arabs, both of them wanted at that time of the Balfour Agreement under United Kingdom and the White Paper and the League of Nations to benefit from each other in the land of Israel. We'll talk about that. The fact is that before the Gaza and Palestinian conflict, Rome. So if we back up, before we even get to the Palestinian-Gaza conflict, and this is the thing that bothered me the most whenever I started to see this in the news and started to study it out in even more detail myself. But, before the Gaza or Palestinian conflict, you hear on the news, Palestine. Gaza and Palestine are the Palestinian conflict. But, a lot of young people today, I would argue most believers as well, don't even know where the word Palestine comes from. What you need to understand, before Gaza, before the Palestinians, Rome tried to obliterate the millennia-old Jewish state in the first century. But unlike other nations conquered in ancient times, the Jews survived. They never lost their profound attachment to their land of origin, the land of Canaan. And we're going to talk a lot about that. What's the difference between the land of Canaan and the land of Israel today? Because it's a really important historical, factual, biblical point to understand. So what's not being taught before the Balfour Agreement is that Jews lived in the land of Israel continuously for 3,000 years. Those forced into exile expressed their yearning to return in their daily prayers for 2,000 years. Many came back in these periodic waves in the form of immigration. And we say immigration just in the form of coming from other countries into another nation. Obviously, that they were given the land, so it's not immigration. Now, it's interesting that Israel as a united kingdom, and you'll hear this phrase a lot. It's a very interesting phrase that's being used. Israel as a united kingdom lasted more than 110 years, 1043, 931 BC. But Israel was united under the reigns of Saul, David, and Solomon. So King Shaul, Saul, King David, and then King Solomon, Shalome, who built the first temple. Then the divided kingdom, Israel in the north, Judah in the south, that's why we say the divided kingdom, they extended from 931 to 721 BC. Israel then fell to Assyria in 722 BC. So this act left Judah the surviving kingdom for 135 years, which then fell to Babylonians in 605 and 586 BC. And I'll flash the screen, showing what this looks like. What you need to understand first is that the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, or Israel, are divided between two kingdoms. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom fell first, and then that was followed by Assyria, and then that was followed by the southern kingdom of Judah and Benjamin, basically fall into the Babylonians, the Persians. And how do we know this? We can still see the remains of Gamla, evidence of an ancient Jewish city in the Golan Heights in 67 CE. So what we're showing is that before Palestine, before Palestinian conflict, Rome, in the wars of Rome against Israel, sought to destroy and enslave Israel. And here's the example. You see the last remains of Gamla, an ancient Jewish city, Gamel or Gamela in the Hebrew or Aramaic. It would be a camel hump, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the heel that looks like a camel hump. So this is where Jews fought to the last person against the Roman army, kind of a last stand holdout for the Jews, and thousands of inhabitants were killed. Others jumped to their deaths from Gamela's cliffs to avoid capture and certain slavery. And then the city was destroyed and never built. But what you're seeing in that picture is how do we know that that's a Jewish city, for example? There's a Jewish synagogue. That's what the photo is showing. You can see the first, some of the first synagogues that were built, the outer court, and all that stuff to do the teachings of the Torah. Now, why do we say all this? Because it's important to understand that Rome is the key to understanding the Gaza-Palestinian conflict. So after Rome sacks Jerusalem and Israel, what we're left with, and I show a picture here, is the outer retaining wall on the west side of the Temple Mount. Of course, they burned the temple to the ground, destroyed it. So all that was left remained after the Romans destroyed the second temple in 70 CE. So we have them, we have them at the Wailing Wall, they call it, but what's important to point out is that the Romans defeated the Jews in 70 CE. And when they did this, they built the Titus Arch. And the reason for the name of it was the Roman emperor Titus. It was built in honor of him. So the Romans defeated the Jews in 70 CE, and they built the Titus Arch in Rome to commemorate that victory, or their victory. This depiction of the sculpture, which is from, and I show a picture of the arch itself in Rome. This sculpture depicts the booty the Romans took when they ransacked and destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. So what you're seeing is them carrying away the menorah, the golden menorah, and some other things, from the temple, possibly even the Ark of the Covenant. What most don't know is that the Roman victors, okay, not Arabs, don't be ignorant. The Roman victors named the conquered Jewish region Palestine. Not the Arabs. Rome did. Many are clueless that the former lands of the Judean kingdom did not constitute a single Palestine entity during 400 years of Ottoman rule. Instead, it was broken up, placed under various administrators by the Ottoman Empire, and for 2 millennia after the Roman conquest, no other state or unique national group developed in Palestine. No ruler chose Jerusalem as its capital. Instead, different empires and peoples came, colonized, ruled, and disappeared. Or at least that is what they want you to believe. In the first century, the Roman Empire defeated the then over 1,000-year-old nation of Judea. They destroyed its dedicated temple in Jerusalem, and they exiled hundreds of thousands of Jews. What's not being told you, believer, or you're not doing your homework, is that to erase all memory of Judea, the Jews, the Romans renamed Judea, after the Jews, Judah, to Palestine, to be named after the Jews' biblical enemy, the Philistines. Westerners since then have referred to the Jewish land as Palestine. Arabs did not adopt the name Palestine until the 20th century. This is why we say, who's behind all this? It's Gadriel, God, the God of this world, Satan himself. Okay? So what I'm showing is simply just the Ottoman Empire in 1914, with Turkey, Egypt, Arabia, and so what's in gray is the Ottoman Empire. What is in light gray is modern Israel and disputed territories. And then what is in the yellow box is the Judean kingdom, first century BCE. And that's why I say the land of Canaan, and I don't say Israel, because we need to talk about that. Most may be shocked to learn that the Middle East, as we know it, is a relatively young neighborhood of countries. And this is an important fact. The question you want to ask yourself is, who was the administrator? Who was the administrator of Israel? Meaning, who held the keys to the land of Israel during this period? So from 1517 to 1917, Palestine was a very unimportant backwater of the Ottoman Empire. Mostly, sparsely populated, impoverished, in a barren area. At the end of World War I, however, 1914 to 1918, the Ottoman Empire was defeated by the Allies, the US, Great Britain, France, and the Middle East was born in countries like Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. Listen, were carved out by who? The Allies. The question we're going to try and answer through the scripture is, who is Israel? Again, who's the administrator of this land that they were able to carve out very young countries, including Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria? This carving up of the nations is an important clue as to who Yahweh placed in this ownership position that we will cover. The boundaries of Palestine were then redrawn and officially recognized as a Jewish national home. So we're showing 1916 to 1921. We have the British mandate, the British Proctorate, the French mandate, independent from foreign power in green. So the newly established League of Nations set up mandates to be administered by France and England until the new states were ready for self-governance. The boundaries established at the end of World War I would be changed several times before assuming their current form. Remember what I said. The Arabs in Israel and the surrounding lands coexisted with the immigrating Jews coming back to their homeland. And then 1922 to 2008, we see in yellow Israel 1948 independence, of course. And then in gray, we see the land disputed with the Palestinian Arabs, and we see a very small. And then the decolonization of Arab states back in independence. You're talking West Bank settlements, things like that, that are in dispute 10 miles. It's crazy. The independence of most of the Middle East modern nation states is relatively recent, although the region is home to many ancient cultures. Several of these states, such as Bahrain and Kuwait, are younger than Israel. Now, what is often not taught is that Zionists envision living in friendship with non-Jewish residents. They believed the entire region would benefit from the restoration of the land. Arabs supported the Jews also being on the land, as the Jews were hard workers and cultivated the more underdeveloped parts of Israel that they were given access to. Think of the outskirts of Jerusalem and the very arid, rocky, mountainous region that would have been undesirable from a habitation standpoint. Jews and Zionists were united around fundamental principles, and with support from other national governments, Britain, France, US, would return legally purchase the land and restore it through their own labor. The Zionists believed that if the scattered Jews reunited in their historic homeland, joining the Jews who were already there, they could restore their freedom, be free from prejudice, and further develop their unique culture. Britain, in the 1917 Balfour Declaration, endorsed the Zionist aspirations, and in 1920, the League of Nations reinforced this commitment and carved out the Palestine Mandate from the defeated Ottoman Empire for the Jewish homeland. You could argue that the League of Nations didn't really, the way that they drew the maps, it didn't take. Truly, the British 1970 Balfour Declaration was the greatest single entity government behind the reestablishing of the Jewish homeland. So by the late 1860s, Jews once again were the majority in Jerusalem. Now you start to see this conflict with the Arabs and the Jews. And then on May 14th, 1948, Israel was reestablished as a modern state. They were recognized by the Community of Nations. And then Israel began with a Jewish majority that had purchased and settled the land and accorded full civil, political, cultural rights to all of its minorities, including Arabs, Muslims, and Christians. So to all of its minorities, not like the media or these left-wing liberal um, professors and these once fully Hebrew embracing colleges. Now, I know this does not fit the current media frenzied narrative of the Jewish Gaza conflict, but 2 Kings is clear who invaded who. But before we go there, even before this, we have clear instruction from Yahweh himself in the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verse 12. The book of Jubilees, Robert? The book of Jubilees and the Apocrypha were once a part of the original scripture that was shared, taken out over time. The enemy doesn't want you to read it, doesn't want you to see it, he doesn't want you to know it, because it exposes him as God Jeriel, the God of this world. It's the reason the world calls him God. We call the Father Yahweh, that's his name. God is not his name. And in that, we also understand that Noah had 3 sons. And what I'll do is I'll probably insert another portion of a video that I created that talks about Noah and his 3 sons and how they spread out and how they populated the earth. And we'll go into it was a teaching I did on Hebrew versus Aramaic, which is older. And it proves Hebrew's older through the archaeological evidence that we have today. So in Jubilees chapter 8, verse 12, though, we learn a very important clue about domain, who owns the land. Of course, Yahweh gave everything dominion to Adam and Eve. They gave it to their descendants and passed it on. Yahweh confirms his covenant over and over again with others in Scripture, Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, others, but Moses particularly, and Noah. So Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So without going into too much detail, I'll probably pop in the video here in a few minutes, but effectively you need to understand that Shem, the son of Noah, from him stems the Semite language. So whenever someone says you are anti-Semitic, what they're really saying, without even knowing it, is that you're speaking against the original descendants of the land of Israel, the children of Israel, under the bloodline of Shem. That's the Semitic, but it's Shem in Hebrew. Or Shem, if you want to go back further than modern version. So what we see in Jubilees chapter 8, it says Yahweh was telling Noah to divide the earth by his 3 sons. So there came forth on the writings of as Shem's lot the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations of eternity. And it goes on to talk about the boundaries of that and some to the south. So in addition, you have Ham and Japheth, and they are also divided a portion of the earth. Listen to what I'm saying. The earth, the dominion, belongs to those 3 sons because it belonged to Adam before that. It just passed down through his bloodline. Now, Shem in particular is important because it says the middle of the earth, across the middle of the earth. So if you look at a map, you lay the map flat, across the middle of the earth would be his domain. We can also see this in Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. The question being, who does the land belong to? Gazanians or Gaza, Palestinians, Arabs, or Israeli Jews that immigrated back to their homeland. Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Send you men that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel, of every tribe of their fathers. And they sent in a representative of every tribe to spy out the land. Yahweh spoke to Moshe in Numbers 34, verse 1 and 2, Command the children of Israel and tell them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan, according to the borders of it. So, sorry, I meant to pull this up. There's Numbers 13, 1 and 2. And then we can see Numbers 34, 1 and 2. And here we're seeing, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan according to the borders of it. Okay? The Father gave the land to Israel. Now, what's interesting is the conflict that's in Israel today. Like, who is Israel? What is that conflict surrounding? And so if you look at 2 Kings chapter 16, we can see, quickly that, was it 5 and 6? Second Kings chapter 16, verse 5 and 6, that Rezin, king of Aram, that's Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Aram, against Syria, recovered a lot to Aram and drove Judah, Yahudim, from Elath, and Aram came to Elath and lived there to this day. To this day. So, if we ask the question, who are the Jews, as a part of the question, who is Israel, we can see clearly here that there's a differentiation between the Judah, the Jews, and Israel. We can also clearly see that Israel was invaded by Syria and remains so to this day. Syrians are Arabs. They speak Arabic, not Hebrew, and mostly not Aramaic if they have a preference. Now, I know culture has driven Aramaic mainstream, but, if you talk to an Arab, they will tell you flat out Arabic, is the oldest form of language. That's the reason I want to insert this video, so you guys can do a refresher and understand Arabic is not the oldest form of language. It's an offshoot from the other sons of Noah, but not from Shem. So what is strange is that the first time the word Jew is used, the Jews are at war with Israel. And then don't just read the word and skip over what was just said here. Syria, invaded Israel, right? Syria invaded Israel. So we can see that at that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria and drove the Jews from Elath, and the Syrians came to Elath and live there to this day. So here's a prophetic statement that the scripture is making about the Arabs, in particular the Syrians. Okay, so through Scripture, only we show a clear separation between Israel and the Jews, which come from the name of only one of the tribes of Israel. And we're going to get into this in the next segment. But the point being here, that if you were to take this statement that is a prophetic statement that Syria would be in Israel today, if you were to make that statement about, let's say, Rome, who conquered, let's say Greece before Rome, Greece, who conquered the known world, Rome, who basically conquered the known world at the time after them, followed by modern times, Great Britain, who colonized basically the entire known world at the time. If any of those were to make this statement, and none of them have, that Rome would be around at the time of America, for example, no one has made this prophetic statement. And here in the scripture, the Father makes this clear that Syria would be in Israel to this day. Clearly, the Arabs and the Syrian influence are in Israel to this day. That is the conflict that you're seeing between the Gazans and the Israeli conflict. Now, when we pick this back up, and I'm going to probably insert the video here just so we can do a refresher on Hebrew and the Semitic origins, so that we can jump right into the next series. And this series may take me a little bit more time than previously. All of them take a lot of time to write up and share with you guys, but we're going to deep dive more into the Jews and really talking about the 12 tribes of Israel, the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom of Israel, and ask the question, who are the Jews? Because before we can answer the question of who is Israel, we have to ask the question, who are the Jews? And so if you have a clear separation in Scripture between Israel and Jews, okay, which come from the name of only one of the tribes of Israel, then we want to understand what that means. We want to deep dive more into that so that we can better understand who Israel is, and then tie that into our belief system of the way as it was taught in the Scripture originally, and then draw all those similarities and comparisons. So, so excited to be getting into this with you. We're going to go deep and study this out, not to convince you of something, but to share with you just really wonderful information to think about, to pray about, and to hopefully elevate, some of your thinking in terms of some of the modern teachings around who Israel is. So thank you again for meeting with me. Look forward to coming together.